President Trump's first 100 days in office have been marked by a large number of executive orders regarding immigration and challenges to those orders that are making their way through the courts. The Trump administration has until Wednesday to provide an update on its efforts to return a man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador. Federal officials have described Kilmar Abrego Garcia's removal as an administrative error, but have not brought him back despite a court ruling upheld by the Supreme Court that said the administration must facilitate his return. CBS News Justice Department reporter Jake Rosen is in Washington. Jake, the pause in discovery ends in the Abrego Garcia case this Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. What happens if the Justice Department fails to deliver any updates?
Well, then, Lindsay, the judge in this case, Judge Paula Zinnes, would have more evidence in front of her to potentially go down the road of contempt of court charges. We saw her at the last in-person hearing, which now was a couple of weeks ago, say she wanted to have all of the material in front of her and all of the facts in the case in front of her, not just the government's allegations that they were doing nothing in court, but written depositions from people who are supposed to have firsthand knowledge of what was going on with potential efforts to return Abrego Garcia. She said she wanted all of that in front of her before she could, in her words, call balls and strikes on this case. Now, if the Department of Justice refuses to cooperate, as she alleged last Wednesday in a pretty scathing filing ahead of this pause, it's certainly possible that she would take more steps because the government, and we saw it again this morning by Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, has signaled no plans to potentially return him and has not really listened to her order and has tried to poke threads and work around the Supreme Court order in this case.
Also on Friday, Jake, a Milwaukee judge was arrested by the FBI for allegedly trying to help an undocumented migrant avoid arrest after he appeared in her courtroom. She's accused of letting him go via a private exit while agents were waiting in a public area. Starting today, she'll have her docket taken over by a reserve judge. What is each side saying and what's next in her case?
Well, we haven't really heard a lot from this judge, Judge Hannah Dugan in Milwaukee. She has not answered reporters' questions, as some local reporters have tried to chase her out of that courtroom late last week on Friday. And her attorney, really outside of a statement in court saying that she regretted the situation, has not said more on this case. For now, until May 15th, she has no opportunity in front of a judge to speak about what happened in that incident or enter a plea on the obstruction charges that she currently faces. But we've heard from the White House and we saw from Attorney General Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, touting this arrest. It's certainly, though, Lindsay, a big escalation between the Trump administration and the executive branch and the judiciary, as we've really seen, these frictions of them not listening to judges' orders or at least trying to find workarounds to then go after and arrest a judge who certainly did not behave in the way that a judge is expected to by allegedly hiding this man from immigration authorities who are seeking to arrest him. But certainly there are other ways to go about that through judicial sanctions or at least to charge her and not kind of create this perp walk situation, which is what the Trump administration at least wanted to do on Friday, sending kind of a chilling signal to other judges or other public officials around the country who may be accused of the same going forward.
A lawsuit filed by Harvard University against the Trump administration after it froze more than $2 billion in federal funding is moving forward now through the system. What are the implications for other universities if Harvard loses?
Well, really, Lindsay, that's the big question, right? How much are these universities and colleges going to fight while this money is still holed up? And at least after today's very brief hearing, it appears that the further court hearings in this case are not going to happen until July. That's obviously, there are billions of dollars at play here. That's a lot of money to remain outstanding from these programs. Do they shut down in the interim and hope that by the fall, potentially some, if not all of that money is restored? This is really the big case, as we've seen other universities like Columbia kind of have internal deliberations about what they do going forward. And again, Lindsay, like we saw states file lawsuits and these law firms as the Trump administration has kind of dangled the threats of cutting money and cutting funds in terms of, prompting cooperation. This is certainly one of those stalwart cases in terms of what the Trump administration wants to do and what places like Harvard are trying to do to fight that.
Jake Rosen, thank you.